And here's again, the same situation in Jerusalem. This map is a little slightly outdated. It's a few months out of date. Here again, you can see the 1967 border. Okay? And in 1967, what Israel did was it unilaterally annexed this area here. Now, the Palestinians who live in this area here, and enlarged it by, I think it was twice the size or 3 times the size of Jerusalem. The Palestinians who live here are what are considered to be permanent residents, but not citizens. And as a permanent resident, not a citizen of Israel, you have to continually show that Israel is the center of your life. So if, for example, you leave the country, you decide to come study at Brandeis for 4 years and go off to Harvard or Boston or wherever to do your PhD, and you're gone from the country for a period of 7 years, your ID card can be revoked. So even though your ancestry is Palestinian, you've lived there your entire life. Your ancestors have lived their entire life. You, as a Palestinian resident, have to, as an Israeli resident, not citizen, have to continually prove that Israel is the center of your life. Otherwise, you will become stateless. Now, in the area as well, I'm going to show you a picture of the settlements as they existed in 1987. There you go. So again, here's the yellow areas are where Palestinians live, Palestinian built-up areas. The purple areas are the Palestinian settlements, the Israeli settlements, excuse me, as they existed in 1987. Here's what they look like in 2007. And this is a little bit out of date. There's actually more settlements that are kind of along this area as well. And so you can see that over the course of that many years, that the process was not a process of Israel returning citizens back to Israel or incentivizing Israelis to leave the territories, but instead it was a process of trying to continually encourage Israelis to move into the territories as a means of really confining Palestinians into small space and taking up their land. Let me see. This is going to go. And so here's the way it looks a little bit. Let's fast forward a little bit more today. Again, same process. As I mentioned in the previous slide, you saw how the wall went around Israeli settlements that tried to confine Palestinians into small spaces and connected those as roads for Israelis. And so too is the system in East Jerusalem. You can see that the wall goes around the Israeli settlements, but separates Palestinian communities from one another. And here are some other checkpoints. Now, this is just a picture of what the wall looks like, for those of you who have never visited or have no idea what it looks like. There's kind of 2 general shapes to the wall. The majority of the wall is actually this lower part here. There's 2 parts. There's this part, which is the lesser form of the wall, and then there's this one. Now, you often see this picture. In fact, you have it on your posters. But this one is actually much worse, and I'll describe both of these. Now, this wall is 8 meters high, concrete wall. And you can see, what I'm going to show you here is, this is a Palestinian institution. This is a Palestinian house. This is a Palestinian house. Is that a Palestinian house? That's a Palestinian house. And so you can see that the wall is actually not dividing Israelis from Palestinians, but it's actually separating Palestinians from Palestinians, as you saw on the previous slide, from the way that it goes around. Now, this wall is the wall that I actually think is much worse than this one here. This visually is quite terrible. It's twice the height of the Berlin Wall. When it's done, it'll be 3 times the length of it. But this one is much worse, this lower wall here. And this is what Israeli critics will come forward and say, oh, it's a fence. Well, let me describe this so-called fence. The fence consists of, or the wall, it's actually a wall, consists of, first you've got some here, which is an electrified fence. Then you've got a series of ditches on either side. Then you have like a dirt road. Then you have a patrol road. Then you have the whole thing then repeats itself. Another electrified fence, and more ditches, and observation towers. Now stretching from one end to the other end of this path is around 50 meters. And anything that has come or will come in the way of this wall has been or will be demolished. And so for me, that is the much more insidious part of it, is that it's not just this in terms of the concrete slabs, which is bad enough, but it's an entire system of control that's designed to both take Palestinian land, confine Palestinians into small spaces, and continue to maintain control over Palestinians. Now getting back to East Jerusalem. East Jerusalem is something that you probably hear about a lot these days in terms of home donations. Now, in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem, there's roughly together about 300 homes that are demolished every year. In the West Bank, there's roughly 3,000 orders that are pending. And in East Jerusalem, there's roughly 1,500 orders that are pending, leaving about 60,000 people who are at risk of having their homes demolished. So again, these are the processes of really trying to confine Palestinians into small spaces and take as much of their land as possible. This is the area of Sudan. I won't go through that unless you're really interested. Just go to the final couple of slides. So then we get to Gaza. Now you saw everything that happened in the West Bank, policies of confining, policies of closure, confining them into small spaces. So too is the case in the Gaza Strip. This is a map of the Gaza Strip as it existed in 2005. At the time, there were roughly 21 settlements that existed, and roughly, the map's a little incorrect, I'll open up. There were actually roughly 8,000 settlers, but we'll go with the 9,000 settlers. The 9,000 settlers ended up controlling more than 30% of the land of the Gaza Strip, and controlling virtually 90% of the natural resources of the Gaza Strip. They consumed more water, they had more access to land, they had more access to sea than Palestinians did. In 2005, to a lot of great fanfare, the Israeli government ended one of those two processes that I was talking about. So there was one process of occupation and control, and then there was the other process of colonization, meaning taking land and building settlements. In 2005, the Israeli government did, in fact, end the colonization of Gaza. They evacuated all the settlements, they demolished they evacuated all the settlers, they demolished all of the settlements, and so the one process was finally over, right? That of colonization of the West Bank. What didn't end in 2005 was the actual control over the Gaza Strip. And what I'm going to show you here is the Gaza Strip, just even a couple of years later after that, and the situation has since gotten much worse, as I'm sure many of you heard with the attack on the flotilla earlier this year. So in 2007, you can see, yes, the settlements were gone. The settlements that were here were actually gone. But instead, what Israel continued to do, and continues to do, is the process of control continued and continues to this very day. So you can see here, for example, that there are a number of different crossing points. There's Rafah crossing point, which goes into Egypt, which is indirectly controlled by the Israelis, not directly controlled by the Israelis, but indirectly controlled by the Israelis. There's the Erez crossing point, which is the crossing point that leads into Israel. And there's the Karni crossing point, which is a crossing point that allows for the movement of goods. This one is here for people. So in 2005, and even before 2005, I used to live in the Gaza Strip for a year and a half, roughly. The elements of control in Gaza remained, even after the Israeli army evacuated. And what do I mean by that? For example, when I lived there, we had real food shortages. I mean, I remember living there for about a year and a half and not seeing yogurt. For about a year and a half, not having cheese. In March of 2006, there were real bread shortages. And it was entirely because while the colonization had come to a close, Israel still continued and continues to control the basic things that get into the Gaza Strip and what is allowed to exit the Gaza Strip. So today, you can see the amount of goods that come in and come out. As of 2007, and you can see it wasn't that great during 2005 either, you can see that it's kind of virtually tapered off to a zero. It's imports and exports. And for workers, again, you see that there were some, not huge amounts, but some, but that has now tapered off to a complete zero. So in May of this year, when the Gaza Freedom Flotilla went in, the Freedom Flotilla was entirely designed to try to redress this. Because what people think about when they think of Gaza, in terms of issues of access and movement, is they think of the amount of imports, whether Palestinians are allowed to get ketchup, or whether they can get chips, or whether they can get shampoo. And that situation has slightly improved since after the flotilla and all of the killing of 9 aid workers. Slightly improved. So there are more goods that are being allowed in to Gaza. But that isn't the way that one measures quality of life. I mean, do you measure the quality of your life on the basis of whether you can get chips, or shampoo, or food? Or do you measure the quality of life on the basis of whether you can see your friends in the West Bank, not the West Bank, around the world? Whether you have access to travel, whether you have the ability to have a job, whether you have the ability to go to university. These are the elements that, although the humanitarian situation has even slightly gotten better in terms of being able to access food, the large and the long-standing control that Israel has over the Gaza Strip has not ended and will not end anytime soon. So I'm going to take this now to the next step, which is what is going to happen in the peace process? Should there be euphoria? Should we be happy about what's going on with the latest peace process? I'm going to turn this off because we don't need that. And if we can get the lights up. And here's where I'm going to now share Edward Said's very same concerns, which is the peace process as it stands is not going to undo the system of control. The peace process as it stands is not going to undo the process of confining Palestinians into small spaces and taking their land. Every single proposal that has been put on the table has roughly followed the same suit, which is trying to allow as many Israeli settlers to remain in the West Bank as is possible, trying to make sure that Palestinians give up or concede as much of their territory as possible, outright denying the rights of Palestinian refugees to return to their homes for one reason and one reason only, and that's because they're not Jewish. And this is a process that is going to continue. So will there be peace? And the answer is no. It leads to the next question, which is if this peace process isn't going to yield a peace agreement, which I assure you it's not, then what can be done? And this is where your talk from yesterday becomes very important.